Okay, now the thing you've got in front of you here is an important writing resource for writing, and it's something that you can hopefully, well, bring it along pretty much. Just there are certain things that are kind of permanent resources, and just have them in your folder, bring them every day, something like this, because you never know when a bit of writing's going to come up, and we do it. And certainly in your assessment, in your exams, writing exams, you can use this. Okay, so in the writing assessments, you can have your grammar notes, there'll be dictionaries that I'll provide, etc. But certainly this, you can have it with you, okay, for the 2 hours that you write. But just generally, it should, I hope, become your writing companion. Let's see why and what it does. Lynn, can you slide that door shut? There's a bit of noise coming through. And then you're going to have to watch it so it comes in, because if we go over the door and you put that there like that. Yeah. Okay, now the Longman produced some pretty good English as a second language resources, and this is one of them. It's just right in the middle of this thing called the Longman Exam Dictionary. The Longman Exam Dictionary itself is not that useful, but this is just something right in the middle. It's the middle sort of few pages of a sort of 300-page dictionary, and this thing is quite useful, I think. Can you just, the photocopying didn't quite work out. Just at the top of that thing, there's a bit cut off, and it should read this: advantages / disadvantages. So what we've got here is a list of, in that section, of words or phrases that are used when you want to somehow communicate the idea of an advantage or a disadvantage, or many advantages or disadvantages. Let's just have a look at that. We've got, have a look at the sections first. Writing about advantages, 2, writing about disadvantages. So in advantages, we've got a few different words: advantage, benefit, merit, good point, plus point, the good thing about, the great thing about, the best thing about. The beauty of something is that. And in disadvantages, we've got disadvantage, drawback, downside, bad point. So you can see they're kind of like synonyms, aren't they? But they're not always exactly synonyms, and there are differences sometimes between these things. I'll take the shorter group, like disadvantage. What does it tell us? Disadvantage, noun, C. What does that mean? Countable, yeah, we should know that by now. NC, I'm often writing it on the board, aren't I? Noun, countable. So that means we can pluralise it. It's got important grammar information. A bad feature that something has, which makes it less good, less useful, etc., than other things. Okay. Then there are some examples, sentences. Now, Longman used a corpus. Remember a corpus? Body of words that are real words that have been written or spoken, usually 100 million, 200 million words or so. And what they would do when they're making something like this, they would type in the word disadvantage and give me all the examples, and then they would pick some and put them in here. So they're real, they're what people have really said or written, they're not just made up by the person writing the book. Secondly, they try to pick ones which have very frequent collocations. Look at them. The main disadvantage, can you see how that's in a different, that's bold, isn't it? So there's your collocation, main disadvantage. What's another one for disadvantage? Serious, yes. What's another one? A major, yeah. So you've got 3 collocations there, and they're examples in sentences. Now they're probably the most frequent collocations. So you get...
Noun C is non-countable?
No, that means it's a noun, N, and the C means countable. If it's uncountable, you'll get a U. U for uncountable. Yeah. So the N just means noun. Yeah, so you get a bit of, grammar, information, accountability, you get some collocations, and you get some examples. Now, let's have a look at the third one there, in a disadvantage. A major disadvantage of, and then look at the example sentence of using, we can use a gerund there, can't we? A major disadvantage of using large quantities of chemicals is that they quickly get absorbed into the soil. So my point here is we can look, if we put on our grammar glasses and look at the examples, we can extract quite a lot of grammar lessons from it. One is a major, so it's countable, so we can use a. A major disadvantage of, we get the preposition. And then we could put a gerund there, couldn't we? A major disadvantage of researching this topic is that there's hardly any material written on it. Okay? Of researching, of studying. Major disadvantage of studying English is there too many bloody prepositions to learn. Whatever, right? Studying, researching, using. Yeah, that sentence. Look at your example sentences as little kind of recipes demonstrating some general principle. We can learn a lot from the examples. This is certainly my suggestion as to how you do it when you are in your writing assessments. You write something, blah, 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 you write disadvantage, you think, gee, I want to say something about disadvantage. So get out your exam dictionary, select disadvantage. Oh, I need an of, and I need a noun, either a gerund, studying, researching, or I could put just another noun there, couldn't I? Of, major disadvantage of the process of study. You know, we don't have to use a gerund. But do you see my point? That you can dig around in your examples to get grammar clues. Could be prepositions, could be articles, could be gerunds, whatever. We can use it like this. Now, that's how I hope you're going to use it at home. And over the next few months, really get to know this thing well. I'll go through the rest of it in a minute. But especially use your examples like this. And so, if you do use this a lot, and you get familiar with it, you're going to be able to refer to it quickly. So when you come to your writing assessment, you're going to know this thing very quickly and easily. You find the right section. When you're in your hour of editing time, disadvantage of doing, you're going to find those things. They will. If you look up a dozen such things in your hour of editing time, and you get the right prepositions and the right verb form, you're going to go from that 3+ to a 4, or the 3+ to a 3+, or whatever. You pull yourself up half a step through careful editing, using the right resources. Okay, so I'm giving it to you this week because you're in the writing phase now, aren't you, with your draft. Yeah. We'll talk more about that in a minute, how you might use this in the draft. Let's keep going on just drilling into the section. That's disadvantage. Here's another word, drawback. Same section, still in the same bit. Disadvantage, which makes you think that something is not so good, even though it has other advantages. Do you see that? That's a bit different from the first one, because you use this one when there are already some positives, but maybe there's this negative to it. But if there are no positives, you can't really use drawback.
Drawback means also.
No, it means what it says there. A disadvantage. Yeah. Yeah. But you can only use, it's a certain kind of disadvantage. It's a disadvantage where there are other positive qualities to that thing. But if there aren't positive qualities, yeah, then we can just maybe use disadvantage. It's a disadvantage. So what the point of this, the strength of this is, you get words that mean similar things, but this will show you those little differences. It will help you control the precise meaning and help you select the exact word you want to describe the precise meaning. I think this happens a lot at this level. If you've got quite good vocabulary, you might have 4 or 5 synonyms. Sometimes you don't use them quite precisely, you know, and don't know the differences between things that are similar. So
sometimes we use the wrong word.
that's right, yeah. And what this is, it's a guide to help you, first of all, choose the correct word, and once you've chosen it, then look at your examples and get the grammatical information to then write it more correctly. Look at the examples, we get some collocation. The major drawback of, blah, 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 blah. Aluminium is very light and also very strong. Its main drawback. The only drawback is. Okay. Downside. Noun, singular. So you can't use that one in the plural. There's a bit of important grammar information. You can't say it has many downsides. The disadvantage of a situation that in most other ways seems very good, seems good or enjoyable. So it's a bit like drawback. The downside of running your own business is that you're responsible if anything goes wrong. Everyone wants to be rich and famous, but it does have its downside. So if something has its possessive downside, you can use it like that. Most comfort eaters enjoy what they eat, but the downside is that, so there's a kind of collocated structure. The downside is that, Last one, bad point. Noun, countable, a bad feature that something has. There are good points and bad points about, preposition, single-sex schools. For all its bad points, and there are many, it is still the best software system of its kind available. So even that collocation, for all its bad points, meaning despite, that for is like despite, here, all its bad points, it's still the best software. So that's just one example, close treatment. And we've got 4 words there that it will guide you through and hopefully help you make a more accurate choice. So, yeah.
This part, it's bad points.
Yeah.
But continuous, you said something. What when you said? If you say despite the fact, despite that fact.
Despite the fact that, yeah, because what despite. Okay. Despite has to. It's a preposition, and if you've been working on that web page of connectives that I've mentioned a couple of weeks ago, you'd realise it's a preposition. So you've got despite. Because it's a preposition, you have to have a noun that will follow it. Now in this case you've got a noun, despite, so what did I say? Despite its bad points. That's a preposition, right? That's a preposition, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh sorry, that's a noun.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a noun here. I mentioned the fact that because despite so he went into town but he didn't buy anything. Okay, he went shopping but he didn't see anything he liked. Okay. You can't say that. Despite he went to town. He went to town. It's not a noun. Despite the fact that. Despite the fact that he went to town. Despite that thing. Now we've turned it into a thing. It's a noun clause. Without that, it's not a noun clause. It's a clause. He went to town, but it's not a noun clause. We have to construct. We have to make sure we follow this preposition with a noun, either a single word or a noun phrase or a noun clause. If we have he went to town, it's just a clause, it's not a noun clause. So that will help you build that. In this case, we've already got a noun. We don't have to do this work to create one. So that's why.
Or can I say despite that he went to town?
Yeah, exactly. Despite, that's right. Now that is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's representing the whole thing, the fact that he went to town.
I don't need to put the fact. I don't.
No, if you've mentioned previously and the readers are clear what that is referring to, you don't have to. Sure. Okay, so look, this is arranged in terms of function. You know, what are you wanting to do when you write? Are you wanting to compare things and talk about advantages and disadvantages? You look there. Let's go through the sections. It's in alphabetical order. Next section, agreeing. So you've got words there about how you agree, expression of agreement over the page. Or to partly agree. Look at those structures there. Agree up to a point. Broadly agree. There is some truth in. So not total agreement, but partial agreement. What happens when a group of people agree? You've got these nouns. Agreement, consensus, common ground, unanimous. Adjective there. Widely held view, widely held belief, collocations. Widely accepted, generally accepted. Think of this, you're writing an argument essay. You probably want to talk about agreement and disagreement somewhere, don't you? Like the majority of Australians agree with this point, or they disagree, or whatever. Okay, so here's the section you might need. If you're writing on renewable energy and you're talking about advantages and disadvantages, depends on your topic, doesn't it? Probably section 1, we just looked at, probably a useful section for you. So in any one topic that you're writing on, whether it's an argument, explanation, description, narrative, recount, instruction, all those genres, and then you've got particular topics within those, what's it an argument about? Is it about nuclear power, renewable energy, asylum seekers, you know? You're going to have different functions you're probably going to want to express. So, aim or purpose. This can be good for... This essay aims to, the objective of this essay is, you know. So possibly an introduction, thesis statement, possibly. Ways of saying what the aim or purpose is. Words meaning aim or purpose, the second section there. And that's where you might use them. The aim of this essay, the purpose of this research, the objective of this paper, the goal of this analysis, you know. Good stuff for introductions and thesis statements. Next section, approximate or exact. So when you're dealing with figures, you know, roughly, exactly, etc. Over the page, I'm going to speed up a bit now.
Why do we use circa?
Circa. Circa is for time. Circa 1700. Or here, I'll give you an example. The Industrial Revolution began circa 1750, so it means approximately around that time. We only use it for time. Yeah. Circa means circle in Latin, so it means around, or, you know, think of the word around, it means that, doesn't it? It's the same metaphor.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It follows up to the next page. Aim or purpose. Okay, approximate or exact you've got. Over the page we go, this is a big one. Causes and effects. So when you're trying to explain something, we've got to cause things to happen. Look at all those words, they're all quite interesting. Make, cause, lead to, result in, create, bring about, give rise to, generate, be responsible for, set off and trigger. All words about cause, but there are little differences. Just examples. Go to bring about. To make something happen, especially a change or an improved situation. So you tend to use bring about positive things. Jump to trigger. See the last one. Trigger. Verb. VT. Can you see that one? VT. What does the T tell you? It's a bit like noun, countable, unaccountable. This is important verb information. Transitive, that's right. So if you see VT, that means transitive. And what does that mean? What does transitive verb mean?
We can have another version of the verb.
It has an object. Okay? Now, let's do an example. It's an important concept. I've mentioned it before, but let's recycle it. Common error between these two verbs. Raise and rise. Okay. I raise the chair to head height. Okay. The sun rises in the east. One of those verbs has an object. Which one? Raise or rise? Raise. I have to raise something, don't I? I can't say raise by itself. It has to have an object. You raise something. You raise somebody's pay, metaphorical. Could be physical, could be metaphorical. But the sun rises, there's no object, is there? So that's your difference there. Raise is VT, that's how you see it in dictionaries, and VI. Intransitive and transitive.
Make is transitive. We can have an object. We can.
That's right. Make is transitive. You have to make something, don't you?
That means that the verb need an object.
That's right. Yes. Has to have an object. Some verbs can do both. Grow. Oh, your children have grown. No object. I grew some carrots in my backyard last year. All the rabbits ate them. You know, I grow something, don't I? So often in dictionaries you'll see VT and VI next to a verb. That's what I will tell you. And it should then tell you in what situations it's transitive and intransitive.
I means without objective.
It means intransitive and no object. Transitive, no object. Yeah. So that's important grammatical information and symbols that you need. So let's have a look at trigger. To make something suddenly start to happen. So you can only use it when it's sudden. Whereas give rise to is usually a slow process. If you read the rest of these, they'll talk about speed, and they usually talk about whether something is positive or negative. Because if you look at trigger, it makes something suddenly start to happen, especially a bad situation, such as a crisis, or a war, or a medical condition. So that it's negative. So trigger, if you think of trigger for a gun, isn't it a weapon? And usually the consequence of weapons is negative. So it's a negative metaphor. The First World War was triggered by a series of events, beginning with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. Certain foods can trigger allergies, health one. If oil prices keep rising, this could trigger an economic crisis. Yeah. So you could say, what triggered the fall in the Shanghai stock market yesterday? Yeah. Something triggered it, didn't it? 8.6% or whatever.
Which is mean. My essay I
Which
use,
means.
which is means.
Yeah. No, is which means.
Which means.
Yeah.
My essay I can use this pattern.
Sure.
Isn't it? Because I'm
Yeah.
talking about the great for the
Very
trade
absolutely.
stock.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah. Yeah. For biological processes, most of your essays you're probably going to argue something about cause and effect.
That's
It's a very important section.
Qualification.
This one's, by the way, this one's about causes, and when we get to E, because it's alphabetical, there's a whole section on effects. So it's another complementary section. Marley.
Is there any qualification of trigger? Trigger of? They have to say trigger of?
Well, here it's a verb. You trigger. No, you don't trigger off. It's not a phrasal verb. You mean of, O-F?
Yeah, of.
This is a trigger. You could say as a noun, this is a trigger of something. As a noun, you could.
Does it say the First World War was triggered by a series of events?
Series, not serious.
Series of events.
Yeah.
I think maybe the trigger...
That's a passive, isn't it? X was triggered by Y. So effect, E, effect, was triggered by C, cause. That's the order if you want to do a passive. You don't have to do a passive. Look at the next one. Certain foods can trigger allergies. That's an active structure. So you can, that even looking, I mean, just there's another example of, if you look at all of your examples, you'll see oh, I can use this actively and I can use it passively. There's another bit of important information. But you kind of have to be wearing your grammar hat to notice that. Yeah. So don't just look at them kind of mindlessly. Think of all sorts of what you can extract out of it grammatically. Okay, look then, the next section, section 2, ways of saying something is caused by another thing. The third one is interesting. To be one of the things that cause something to happen. No doubt, many of you, especially writing about a social issue, here's the problem, P, and it's created by, causes, some of them really big and some of them small. And you want to talk about one thing that's contributing. It's not simply there's P, and it's nice and simple like that. It's not one thing. Most social situations are more like this. So here's some good phrases. Something plays a part. It is a factor. It is a factor in, you'll see the preposition. It contributes to, influences, etc. These are good for this kind of situation. Okay, pushing on, certainty and uncertainty. Alright, I'll go a bit quicker now. Comparing, contrasting. Many phrases there. Concluding, obviously, the conclusions. Don't necessarily have to use those phrases, but they could be useful. Now, the next one, just quantities, decreasing. Very good for IELTS, your graphs going up and having a nice rich vocabulary of rising and falling. There's another one, increasing, we'll get to it in a minute. But how do you say things decreased? The Shanghai share market yesterday, declined, fell, dropped, plunged or plummet. That's what I would say the Shanghai market did yesterday. To suddenly decrease very quickly and by a very large amount. That's like a vertical drop, plunge or plummet. Halve, diminish. Dwindle. It didn't dwindle. Dwindle was very slowly. Over a long time. Next section, disagreement. Disagreeing. That's opposite to the agreeing one we saw earlier. Here's the next one, effects. That's your complementary one to cause, isn't it? So you've got a whole series of words there about effect. Keep going. Emphasize. Yeah, you want to say something's really important. I'd like to stress that. It's crucial, it's vital, blah, blah, blah. Explaining. Explaining. Words about explaining. Next section, giving examples. Hopefully you'll do that to clarify points, general points. For instance, particularly, a case in point. Giving exceptions. Giving opinions. Keep going. Giving reasons. Giving reasons. Increasing, that's your opposite to decreasing, obviously. Lots of words there. Now then the next section there, linking parts of a sentence. And that's a very broad area. You've got words meaning and or also, words meaning because, and then there's a couple of pages. Words meaning but or although, or if, in order to, or, therefore, it goes on. Quite a long section there of different connectives. Next one, listing and ordering. You might want to list or order your arguments. Making generalisations, talking generally about things. Keep going. Problems and solutions. Well, your controversial topic is dealing a lot with those, so you're probably going to use that a lot. Further on, quoting people. You want to bring in an expert? Here are some words you can use. Roswell points out, Roswell remarks, Roswell observes, Roswell states, Roswell argues, Roswell concludes, Roswell claims. According to Roswell, in the words of Roswell. try to vary it, you know, keep your reader awake by just not using Roswell says, Roswell says, Roswell says. Referring, now this one is when you're referring to what you yourself are writing. So, as mentioned above, meaning earlier in the essay, isn't it? Or preceding, or